The clock begins. All right, guys. Well, hi, it's Kristi. Welcome to yet another hangout. Before I started this, before my guests arrived, I was in the chat and I noticed that some random geek was saying, I wonder who will be in this chat. And the reason why I didn't list anybody for this chat, because I honestly didn't know who was going to turn up. But many fun people have turned up. So
my notification box on YouTube as this hangout might not even happen.
You're not even sure the was up front.
Piss take.
Yeah, then people confirmed, then we decided the topic was sort of agreed upon, which is Jordan Peterson, upon whom I'm not an expert, but I'm really concerned about some of the things I have been reading recently. But yeah, I'm here joined tonight with...
It's perfect that you're talking about him as not an expert, because he talks about things he doesn't know anything about, so that's perfect.
All right, well, he's the same level of expertise then. So yes, I'm here with Kevin, I'm here with Ted, and I'm here with Tim. And we don't have to talk about Jordan Peterson, but certainly if you guys have thoughts on that topic, I think that's where we should start. So maybe I'm going to go in order. I'm going to kick it off with Tim, and then Ted, and then come back to Kevin. And if you guys want to make a contribution, why don't you start there?
To the Jordan Peterson thing.
Yeah. What's your take on this? So I guess we should give a little bit of a background, which is that Jordan Peterson is getting some pushback. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here for you guys on this proposal about a website where students or people would be able to enter in data to complain about postmodernism and cultural Marxism. Basically, when I'll put a link to this in the description box, but toward the end, he says... let me see. Peterson describes women and gender studies and what he refers to as racial and ethnic group studies as pathological, a cancer. And also, I think he was saying that, here we go. Here's the bit I wanted, that sociology is corrupt, anthropology is corrupt, English literature is corrupt.
English literature, that's the one I don't get. Like, fuck, could you be any more broad? Like, that is so broad. And
yes.
all of English literature.
Yeah. So again, I'll provide that link afterwards. But basically, anything that deals with non-white men, that's corrupt, and English literature, anthropology, sociology, then presumably also architecture, that has been in music, that's been influenced by postmodernism. Surely that's part of the decadent culture that's rising.
What's he got against English? Because I mean, it reminds me of the great words of the former U.S. State governor. He said, "What was it? If English was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough." Yeah, I don't know what his problem is there, frankly.
The English literature one really goes over my head, because it's like, okay, if you're like crazy conservative Christian right-wing loony dude like Jordan Peterson, I can understand, like, okay, sociology, women's studies or something. But English literature, like, that is amazingly broad. Like, how could all of it be corrupt? Like, you can't read a fictional book and it's without it being corrupt. Like,
well, I think what he wants to do is screen all of English literature for that kind of postmodernist thinking to get it back to modernist thinking, because we need to go back in time.
But he was saying abolish women's studies, and I don't know, maybe abolish sociology or whatever. Does he want to abolish English lit?
Well, they're corrupt. They're corrupt, so we have to decorrupt them by taking ideas out, because he's a free speech warrior.
But is it abolish some of them? Abolish some of them and fix some others. Is that it? I don't know. Hello?
I was going to give Kevin a chance to answer, but yeah, Ted, you go ahead.
Just saying, how will he plan to do that? Is he planning to do it himself? Go through every book in the library? At least he shut up for a year if we left him doing that.
That would be a good task.
He said he wants to create an AI that does it, so he'd have a robot doing it for him.
Right. So the idea, I think, would be that people would report on the content of their courses and like sort of measure how much postmodernism is being taught in the course of the courses. And that way you could sort of quantify the corruption and then analyze it. And they're apparently working on this website.
I don't want to go on too much of a rant here. No, go on, Ted.
So, will there be like traffic lights green says okay about the postmodernism. Yellow is the red. No, if a book is marked red, it has to be burned. Too much postmodernism.
Maybe there'll be a panel or something. Like, we have to put your materials up for review to see if they are too postmodern.
Are we just going to have to ask the prophet Peterson? He knows.
Yeah.
That's true.
Safe and
He
not.
knows everything.
What's the article that you were showing before?
Oh, right. So,
just
Kevin, why
quickly-
don't you talk and I'll get the article up.
All right. Yeah.
Because I want to see.
Yeah.
Quickly. Sorry, just before you start. Okay, sorry. I was just going to say. I just want to see what he wants to abolish and what he wants. That's all. Yeah. All right.
Does the death stare work on the other side of the wall? Oh, I wonder.
I don't know. All right, try it. Let's see it. What does it look like?
Anyway,
That's the
yeah, I
death
was just
stare. You just look confused.
well, that's my natural. That's my resting bitch face, man. I am totally confused. Anyway, yeah, postmodernism. He's mentioned of postmodernism there. It seems really odd to me that he'd be against postmodernism, considering they hate it because they changed the meaning of words. When he's been on a Twitter rant about how basically consent doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's fine. You don't really need consent. That element of postmodernism would be perfect.
I think what he said was that a marriage had to be constructed in order to contain sex because it's so dangerous. Which is quite postmodern, I think. But to answer, can I just answer Tim's question? And then, Kevin, also, you're getting kind of robot-y, so maybe you hit F5 to refresh while I read this. The quote here from Peterson is, and hi, Gwen, by the way, I'll get you in a second. They can use the website to distinguish between people who are credible and people who aren't, and maybe we can drop the damn enrollment in those horrible courses by 75% over the next 3 years. It's in their best interest, both, I would say, spiritually and economically, to avoid those courses and those disciplines like the plague. And then maybe we can get the disciples, the disciplines, sorry, that have been entirely corrupt and the ones that have started that way to put themselves back together before they run themselves out of existence completely. And I might as well name a few disciplines, and then I've already listed that out. So that's what he said.
Yeah, he wants to cripple academia. Brilliant.
But just quickly, does he want to abolish women's studies?
Yeah, that's one of the groups.
That's not to improve, that's to abolish, right?
Yeah, I think he would prefer to get rid of those. Yeah.
Is anyone surprised that a religious fundamentalist bigot is against women being knowledgeable? It's not a surprise to me.
So anyway, yes, Gwen, welcome. Sorry you've been waiting patiently here listening to us finish up the section. So do you want to give your reactions to the Peterson AI website to rate postmodernism so they can drive it out of the universities?
Well, I guess, can you hear me? Am I all right?
You're good.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I guess my main thing was the first thing that I saw was some tweets from Peterson that I just thought were really, really awkward. And then I saw that that video. I think I retweeted it, but it was a video where he's just kind of going on that rant in that speech that he gave about like which fields are corrupted by ism and or whatever other boogeyman he's going to be raging on about. But I think he listed anthropology, English literature, and sociology as being corrupted, which I thought was very interesting. Particularly anthropology, which I remember knowing a few anthropology majors, and they were pretty scientifically minded people. So I guess it's not strange that a kind of fundy type like Peterson would be against that field. But yeah, I guess it is kind of baffling to me the number of people that just seem to like follow him. They want to follow him off that bridge.
What's astounding to me is it's a direct attack on academic freedom, which is a fundamental cornerstone of teaching, is the idea that you should be able to expose students to ideas in the classroom, or ideas, and the idea that he's going to come in and, write these courses with an eye toward reforming them, re-education camps, or taking them out, driving them out of existence because the enrollment goes so low. It is an attack on academic freedom, and as a consequence, just the exploration of ideas that happen at a university. And I can't believe anyone in the free speech crowd could support that.
Yeah.
It's so much, quick point. It's so much like he's scared people might realize he's wrong.
Wrong about what?
Just everything he goes on. If people,
Entire world.
Everything.
if people read books, they'll realize he's full of shit. So ban books.
Yeah. Well,
That's
like
the thing. He is a religious man. It makes sense because basically the way you teach people not to believe in the kind of mythological bullshit that he believes in, and I'm not just attacking religion here. I'm talking about his entire the construct of his entire fucking world in his own head is to put information in there because it instantly falls down.
Well, Gwen mentioned anthropology, and that's true. I was thinking about that, and I think that's a very good point. He is a religious fundamentalist and like kooky religionist, so it makes sense that something looking at the development of societies and over time would be something he wouldn't like, because then it might show that the Bible view or the religious view is flawed, and he probably wouldn't like that. Like, there's too much postmodernism, like talking about facts and the actual Earth being, well, that's not anthropology, but like if you go back a certain amount of time, kind of screws up the Bible a little bit. I'm sure he wouldn't like that.
Well, exactly, yeah. Well, I'm surprised he doesn't have a go at archaeology as well, because that's proven that the Jewish exodus couldn't possibly have happened as well. So why not get rid of that? Fuck it.
Yeah, because this is a man who literally cries over the thought of atheism. Just like the idea of atheism. Atheism exists.
All I'm going to say to that is turn his acolytes' words back on him by saying, "Reals before feels, bro. Reals before feels."
I'll say I've enacted Super Chat and I've never really promoted it or anything, but point curation, thank you for the contribution. And you asked a question, which as a good sort of Sylvian Doug aside, what are the virtues or good points of Peterson? Did you answer that question? I don't remember hearing that. But my answer to that question is, I don't doubt that in his peer-reviewed field, when he does peer-reviewed work, that is stuff that should stand in the academic literature in order to be consumed by the community and evaluated and reproduced over time. But outside of that field, I think he promotes ideas that are completely worthy of criticism without having to overcome the objections of peer review, because these aren't ideas that he's been peer-reviewed on. And that's one of the things that I think people in the chat are going to kind of point out, that his understanding of postmodernism and conflation with cultural Marxism is a reason I changed the title to compare him to McCarthy, which is McCarthy had this ideology, communism, that he was going after, and he had a list that he kept saying he had exposing the communists. And I feel this is a similar tactic of gathering information and having lists and then going after specific academics in specific fields and questioning their ability to present the ideas they think are necessary for their students to master the material. So yeah, Tim. So that'd be my point, and your answer to that question, Tim.
Yeah.
Oh, some nice things about him. Well, quickly, just on the McCarthy thing, I think one key difference is that the institutional power that McCarthy had was a lot more. I mean, he was a senator, so I mean, I know like Peterson has the ability to screw up people's lives around him, like students and other people at his university, but at least he's not a senator. That would be that'd be a bit worse, probably.
Right, but I think you're maybe under or maybe not aware of the pressures that universities do feel when public attention is brought to bear on a specific member of their staff in a controversial way. And so, yeah, he might not have the power of, say, an elected senator to be on a committee, but he does have the cover of his tenure to go after people who don't.
Right. Oh no, like I said,
insidious.
like in his sphere, in his realm of influence, he has the ability to fuck a lot of shit up. I just think McCarthy was worse in the sense of having more sway on like an
Yeah, he had
entire
a whole
system.
career. Like it all played
Yeah.
out for him. Like this is just a start for the
Yeah.
Peterson thing. We
Yeah,
don't know
oh
what's going
God.
to happen with it.
I don't know where he's going to get to, but good points. Okay, he, I don't know how to say this word. He gesticulates nicely? Gesticulates. How do you fucking say that word?
I think it's
He's
I
got-
think it's gesticulation. So he gesticulates.
when he's going like this, it's like, oh, that's nice. And he is good at sounding like he's saying something smart. He's good at sounding like he's being deep. Like that's cool. He's got a way with words that sounds like it means something, and that's just fantastic. I think that's great. That's the
Would
positives
anyone
for me.
else like to address any positives that you see in Peterson or his work?
Sounds deep.
You
Great.
can
My answer 3 comments down from the actual the chat itself. You don't read that. It's fine.
Yeah, but people who watch this in the future won't read your comments.
What do you guys think of as gesticulating? His gesticulating. Bad.
He's one day, he will die.
However the hell you said. 4 out of
His
5.
movie Handy
That's pretty
Bits.
good. Yeah, he's a handyman. I don't know. I don't actually have anything good to say about him because, I mean, I'm not interested enough in his field of study to go through and read his shit. And beyond that, every time I see him, it's just a bunch of fucking gobbledygook fucking mess that is it. His fans think he's saying stuff, but I saw a good comment that said that people basically project whatever meaning they want onto his words, which is kind of postmodern in its own way. You know, he's a bit of a postmodern conduit. Be like, no, he's actually saying this, he's actually saying that, because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of babble. You know, a lot of the time. And
Right.
like I said, I'm
And I mean, I
not
don't
interested
question-
enough in his actual studies. I'm sure maybe his studies are fine. I don't know. I haven't really looked into them.
I have the same view of Thunderfoot in terms of the fact that I don't, when he does a peer-reviewed piece, which usually tends to be with quite a lot of other people, and they've gone through that process and they get published, that's a finding that has gone through the peer review process. So, maybe unlike them, I don't question their ability to judge, to claims in their field or to make significant contributions in their field simply because of the object of inquiry. But I think I wanted to hear from Ted and then Gwen too, because make sure everyone has a chance and also lead some direction and give some guidance.
what's some good things about Peterson?
Yeah.
Well, that's hard. As Tim said, there aren't many. But I guess watching him, you could believe he knows what he's talking about. He seems quite articulate. He can hide the fact he's talking rubbish well, which annoyingly quite a few of the shitlord community seem to be good at.
Well, that's definitely a backhanded compliment, Ted. Gwen, do you want to unmute yourself? And if you have any thoughts on that
Damning with faint praise from Ted there.
question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I would just say that my favorite thing about Dr. Peterson would be that we don't live anywhere near each other. He's from Canada, and that's about all I've got. I'm not familiar with much of his work, so I can't speak to that.
Well, there we go. I hope it was worth the $2. Thanks for that. So back to then this idea of the attacks on postmodernism and cultural Marxism. And actually, Kevin, this might be a brilliant time for you to step in, because I tried to watch your interaction with Coach Red Pill, who was doing exactly the kind of point scoring that Jeff Holiday was crying out and condemning in his video in Sinatra Says. And he had I think a rather bizarre take on justification of what is happening today is cultural Marxism. I really don't understand Marxism, which is about owning the means of production and creating things in an economic sense, to the culture, considering the culture is completely dominated by capitalism. movies,
Yeah.
music, all of that. So yeah,
Well,
do you have any insights from the psychology of Coach Red Pill?
Well, the psychology of Coach Red Pill is much like the rest of these fucking extremist ideologues. The obvious point to make is if Marxism is applied to culture, it's not cultural Marxism, it's just Marxism. It's got its own fucking name. You don't need to put this extra boogeyman thing on there. And secondly, his basic argument seems to boil down to cultural Marxism does exist because Frankfurt School. And that's it. The idea that the Frankfurt School existed, therefore cultural Marxism is the dominant force in world politics now. And that's basically the argument. And you think, it's like talking to a fucking 7-year-old. It's not an argument, that's a nonsense. Hello.
Hi.
So no one, you have to, that's the point of a conversation, people. When I stop speaking, someone else has to step in and then
Oh,
speak.
I get.
Otherwise,
I'm
Sorry,
silent.
I thought I hit unmute. Sorry, my mistake. I was chatting away.
I interrupt people all the
Talking to
time, so
yourself.
I'm trying to like take it easy on the interrupting. I just do it again, and then all right, muting myself.
No, so anyone else? And I really don't understand their concept of cultural Marxism. So, anyone else have a sort of a summary of what they think the concept of cultural Marxism from that anti side?
It's like all
Can I-
conspiracy theories. It's like
Yeah,
all
go ahead.
conspiracy theories. It's meant
Greg,
to
can I
be,
follow you? Conspiracy theories.
basically. Yeah,
I think
it's meant to be vague. If you define
yeah,
it,
it is
then
meant
you're
to be
not down.
vague. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think I mentioned this in a tweet at some point. Jordan Peterson, I think, is this excellent case study into a certain kind of mentality where all of your political adversaries are kind of all part of the same nebulous group, and they've all sort of got this conspiracy or this kind of vague motive. They're all kind of in on the same conspiracy. I don't understand the appeal to it. I do kind of get sometimes when people who are American, and I have to assume that, you know, some other countries have the same kind of like some of these vestiges of like this Red Scare propaganda nonsense, where if you say Marxism, people kind of freeze up and it just sounds like you're invoking Stalin's name instead of the name of some theorist. It really sounds, when you say cultural Marxism, like just one of the bad takes that I've heard from somebody on the internet was this idea that, I think they were talking about Black Lives Matter, but it's the same thing. They were like, oh, some people want to be equal and they're going to make themselves too equal. And then suddenly they're going to be, I don't know, the people in charge oppressing other people. It's not a thing that has to be possible or realistic or make a lot of sense, but it's very
Right,
threatening.
Nobody fears
Can I just-
cultural Freudianism.
Can I just, as to Gwen's point, I think it's a superb point, and it takes you back to the historical. It takes me back to a thought from history. Is that this is how regressive forces have always argued against progress? Is by saying if we allow these people to be lifted up, they'll be the masters and we'll be the servants. And it goes back all the way to slavery. The arguments that was made against the repeal of slavery in America was, oh, if we allow these black people out of chains, they'll make us the slaves. It's the same argument's been used for hundreds of years, and it's pathetic. But ultimately, you can knock it down very easily because it's an absurdity to say two equal. What's two equal? There's no such thing.
Oh, Kristi asked what. Oh, sorry, Ted. Were you going to say something?
Never quick point. I think maybe part of the thing that people want boogeyman. So if you just point vaguely at the left, saying the boogeyman kind of over there, because obviously now, because of political correctness, even people far on the right can't say it's black people and gay people, it's women. They have to just point vaguely at the right, just dog whistle to racists that can't want to hear that.
So I guess cultural Marxism just becomes a catchphrase for that, or a like catch-all label for the minorities, they're coming, whatever. But
as I said to Coach, no, go on, Ted.
No, what you said exactly. Carry on, Kev.
I was just going to say it's the point I tried to make to Coach Redfield, that cultural Marxism is an amalgam of basically any vaguely progressive concept that might be being pushed in a society at any given time. So they'll say, oh, it's communists, and it's JWs, and it's Black Lives Matter, and it's the Women's March. And you think, how fucking broad is this? That's so ridiculous to have that broad a group of people and say there's some sort of unified force. That's an absurdity.
One thing I'd like to bring up is the fact that very recently, I want to say in the last month, there was a minister who had his office write to all the universities in the UK asking for information that were teaching on Brexit and whether they were teaching anti-Brexit ideas.
Yeah.
And there was an outcry from the academic community saying this is an attack on academic freedom. Again, it's this idea that when it's the university setting, ideas need a place to be discussed and idea evaluated and critiqued. And you can't have these kinds of controls of saying you can't teach this idea. And so there was a letter written in response. Several people were quite upset about this. And actually someone that I'm working with at Warwick, he actually in a slide presentation during his lecture put up a big, just said, Brexit is shit. And someone took a picture of it, and it sort of became a little mini viral thing. And actually, I think one of the student union groups at work are now selling T-shirts that says Brexit is shit with the same font on it. But his point was, you need to have, like, you can say that provocatively and then argue to students. Why would you say to students to argue against this?
Well, this is
this argument.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The very same people who argue that Milo Yiannopoulos should be allowed to speak on any campus on anything, even though he has absolutely no academic credentials, that what he's saying has no academic value or worth whatsoever. But those very same people have absolutely no problem with these obvious attempts at far-right censorship and freedom of discussion of actually genuinely academic, interesting and worthwhile ideas, which I think tells you quite how much these people actually believe in the marketplace of ideas.
Oh, and actually, if you had a course that was entirely devoted to debunking postmodernism, and every single week you went through another postmodernist idea, that course would be on his list as being a massive problem because it discussed postmodernism all the time. This is why, it's just unbelievable to me that a member, especially a professor, engage in a kind of behavior. This is, kind of along the lines of an academic version of the thing that got Candace, what's her name, in Red Pill Black in so much trouble, or has created so much drama for her. It's a way to target
social
people,
autopsy,
but for academic courses, and those are tied to academics.
This is academic autopsy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, he should totally steal that academic autopsy. That's awesome.
Hey, trademark. He's got to pay me every time he uses it.
No, pay me. I came up with it.
Oh,
sorry.
damn it, Sam! Damn it, you're right. Kevin is cleverer than me. Damn it.
Can I go back to something, Kristi?
Sit back and earn a fortune as
Cha-ching.
and destroys Western academia. Brilliant.
Cha-ching.
So can I go back to something? You said, what is the actual meaning of cultural Marxism? I don't know if this is a good source, but Rational Wiki, is that a dodgy? I don't know, maybe. But
it's not a great source, but
what's it? The term cultural Marxism, and this is in an academic sense, not in a pejorative, was first cited in 1973 in the Critique of Domination, the Origins and Development of Critical Theory by Trent Schroyer. Schroyer coined the term as an accusation that some theorists were failed Marxists, merely cultural Marxists, who had been subsumed by middle-class capitalism. Or cultural Marxist was originally an insult made by commies against commies who weren't comming enough. This is not the same as the definition used by modern conservative fearmongers.
So what they've missed out there was actually this dates back to the cultural Bolshevism, as they called it. It was the same thing. It was coined by Nazis and has been continued by neo-Nazis ever since. So that.
But it seems that-
Right, but this sounds
seems
like
that
champagne socialists. That's
Well, it
what
seems
that
like
sounds to me.
the original sort of academic left-wing usage of it sounds, based on this, I don't know if it's accurate, was to say that they are not really practicing Marxists. So they're just sort of like, they go around
Bougie
talking
Marxists.
about being, yeah, bougie Marxists, you know, which is very different from how the right uses it. So
Yeah.
it's actually the
So that's
opposite of how they're like, they
That's
use
an
it
awful
to,
definition.
they say it to be too
That is
left-wing.
an absolute.
What's that? Gavin.
Come back, Kevin.
I was just saying that.
Yeah,
That
you're
what you
back.
read out there.
Hmm.
Terrible definition.
What's a terrible definition?
The definition you read out of cultural Marxism.
Well, it says this is under academic usage. It's not under the right-wing modern
There isn't really.
buzz phrases.
There isn't actually really any academic usage, is there? Really?
Well, no, this guy coined the phrase as a critique of bougie Marxists, and then that
Yeah.
phrase
Well,
was
that's-
picked up
yeah.
and reinterpreted
that's-
or reinvented by another group.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think
Because
it's
I don't-
even reinvent it, because it's basically just an extension of that same the same Nazi concept, and I mean literally Nazi, as in Hitler Nazi people who used it as they coined it as cultural Bolshevism, but it's exactly the same concept.
maybe this
So
Trent
it's not. It's nothing-
Schroyer guy was like taking it back. Like, we got to take back cultural Bolshevism, man. We got to like reappropriate it.
Yeah,
It'd be
make
something
cultural Bolshevism great again.
less anti-Semitic. You know.
I want to give Gwen a chance to jump in on this.
Well, you couldn't. It would be anti-Semitic and a cultural Marxist, considering Marx was a Jew, but never mind.
So actually, speaking of definitions, I pulled up the Wikipedia page for the Frankfurt School, which is exciting. And sort of deep down in that article, there's a paragraph about the term cultural Marxism. And it says, the term remained academic until the late 1990s when it was misappropriated by paleoconservatives as part of an ongoing culture war in which it is claimed that the very same theorists who were analyzing and objecting to the massification and mass control via commercialization of culture were in fact working in a conspiracy to control and stage their own attack on Western society using 1960s counterculture, multiculturalism, progressive politics, political correctness as their methods. This conspiracy theory version of the term is associated with American religious paleoconservatives such as William S. Lind, Pat Buchanan, and Paul Weyrich, but also holds currency amongst alt-right, white nationalist groups and the neo-reactionary movement. And then it goes on to talk about how they use it to mean things like feminism, civil rights, gay rights, atheism even, you know, all that. So I just wanted to kind of inject that.
That's the perfect description.
Well, I also think just because, you know, if something has come up in an academic setting, it doesn't mean that it's an influential idea in academia. Like, this could have just been a term somebody came up with that had like a very particular meaning that was just completely taken from that context and just turned into this like big crazy thing. But it doesn't mean that it was at all an influential term or phrase at the time, you know.
There are a lot of academic terms that are completely uninfluential.
Yeah. And they often get turned into these kind of things, right? Like someone somewhere picks it up and it gets turned into this.
Just have a lot of
thing.
words for things, and you know, just a lot of it doesn't break into the sort of the public the lay understanding of science or the discipline, but insider talk. Yeah.
Well, I guess a right winger saw it at some point and was like, "That sounds pretty good, cultural Marxism. Hey, let's make use of this."
Jordan Peterson's problem with English literature: just too many words. Too many. Let's cut down on the number of words here, people.
If only there was a type of like language where they reduce the number of words. I don't know what that would be called. If only some kind of author had come up with that.
But that would be too many words. We don't.
Come on, don't you guys get my reference? Philistines. Orwell. Anybody?
No.
You speak.
I can hear the crickets chirping.
What the hell is this man talking about? Oh, something
in a
from
way,
English literature.
Yeah, but that's
Typical.
Tim, that's slightly a rough interpretation, because although there are words gotten rid of, there were new words founded. So I mean, I don't know. I think you're unfair.
What are you talking about?
Not that I'm defending the state. Not that I'm defending the state in 1984, but new words were created, weren't they? So
If you have to start it with not to
Anyway.
defend the state in 1984, then the next words that are coming are going to be bad. Like, you know,
just on a linguistic level.
I'm not a
I think they were
racist,
fine.
but
I'll let them off.
I mean, the
No,
Jewish
I'll
question.
let them off. in linguistic terms, they were fine. The repression, not so much, but the linguistics, I'm absolutely okay with.
Oh
With my
god,
basic point.
are you kidding?
All right, well, and on that bombshell. Right,
Oh
any
man,
other
heavens of fasci.
any other comments on
Cognitive
Peterson?
language, though.
What's that?
So, you sound like a language specialist. Yeah, okay.
That's true.
Well, anyone
I like
who's
being
seen-
a grammar
anyone who-
Nazi.
But you guys know the
yeah, anyone
original.
who's seen my series on Walk Up to Book knows that. Yeah.
You guys know the original idea behind Newspeak.
The
Right?
original
Or-
idea behind what
Newspeak.
was
Yeah, it was
to
to break
drain it
down-
of its.
it was essentially post the idea of what they think postmodernism is, isn't it?
Well, the whole purpose, from what I understand it, was to reduce the number of words that could be used to criticize power or express your personal opinion or point of view. So they're trying to make it, so in 1984, they're trying to make it so you literally cannot express the kinds of things you want to that might be subversive or might, you know, challenge the regime. So they remove all the words that you could possibly use to even criticize the regime. Yeah. And it does, you know, what Jordan Peterson, like, I feel like Orwellian is thrown around way too often in life, but it does have an Orwellian vibe to it. Like, we have to, like, make sure certain ideas are not allowed to be heard because then they might think too much, and that could be a problem.
That's precisely it. I mean, it is a very. I'm very disturbed. I find it very disturbing. I keep using that word, but I don't know how else. Unsettling, the idea behind that, and then not just having the idea is one thing, but like following through on it. I mean, let's face it. I think if it ever went live, it would get trolled like crazy, just like that PewTube did.
It has to be called
I think it
academic
would be-
autopsy, though. That would be so good.
Yes,
Well, I love the
academic autopsy would be trolled.
Maybe we
on the
should have one, like a
future.
social justice one. You know, how come like
Yeah.
the
I
right
love
and all
the- I
these
love the-
crazy
on the
right wingers get one?
on the PewTube thing, what they did, lots of people, even people who weren't communists, because obviously it was a far right joke of a website. So they just uploaded thousands and thousands of editions of the Soviet national anthem, and they all got taken down straight away.
I propose,
So
was
much
so
free
great.
speech.
I propose
Extremely
we start
loud.
justice autopsy. It's social justice autopsy. What do you think?
Yeah.
And how would it work exactly? What would go into the database or archive or AI?
Anything problematic?
Our content would be evaluated for its postmodernist content.
No, it'd be anything like transphobic, sexist, fascist, questionable. Would go into.
It would be
the-
Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, it would go into the social justice autopsy archive, and then it would send back to you their home addresses and social security number, how many children they have, like where they work.
Are you trying to
Email
get on
address.
Dave Rubin with Blair? Is this what this is about?
And people
Sorry,
won't mind
we're
this
going
at
back-
all. It's just justice autopsy.
This just sounds like the actual state in 1984 again now. So where are we going with this?
Everything
I mean-
leads back to 1984.
I think if crazy right wingers get to do this, why don't we? They did it first.
Well, I think if you're going to do it, what you've got to do is create an algorithm that lists all of the different racists, and we'll call it the problem-o-matic, and then we'll add the sexists and etc. That sounds like a
The
great
race-
idea. Nothing will go wrong.
Racist-matic list, whatever. Race-o-matic, and it sends automatic emails to like people's workplaces, like saying like, your employee
Tim,
has
you-
been found using problematic language online. They made a joke that sounds racist. Please review.
Yeah, but who hasn't used actually problematic language on the internet? You can't be on the internet without doing that.
Well, clearly he's
I
being
know, I'm just-
satirical or doing a crazy thought experiment to provoke people. But
I know, I'm just saying that this social autopsy thing has stolen our thunder. We're no longer public enemy number one. We've got to get back in the game, you know? That's what I'm saying. It's the only way to do this.
You have a white lecturer riding along in the car listening to the gangster rap, singing along. Next day they're in prison.
True.
You said
Okay,
the
I'll be careful.
N-word. Yeah, but they were singing along. No, something like that.
I just think it's funny
basically
that, like, you
everyone's
know,
Twitter feed.
hardcore right-wing person, you know, Red Pill Black makes this thing which is so freaking insane, and it's like, and still like at the same time, it's still like the point of comparison is social justice people, because they're always the number one demon. It's like, what you're doing is just like the SJWs, whatever. It's like, what? But I don't know if like this database AI thing that we're trying to make. Do we
I
have
just don't
one?
understand. One apparently he's working with a web designer to build this AI. At least that's what my understanding is from reading the coverage. But on the whole, like Dave Rubin, I don't know how much we're going to talk more about Peterson, but let's get into the Rubin stuff because that's hilarious. But
Oh my God.
it just seemed to me that conversation should have lasted exactly this long. So Blair, what did you want to say to Candace? Candace, you had a really bad idea for a website. Candace, how do you respond? Yeah, you're right. I did, and I took it down. Blair, oh,
Well,
okay. Show
also,
over. Like,
what-
why was it
what
longer
is-
than that?
Also, what is the website? They never actually described it, and some people who didn't know what it was, they watched that whole thing and they were like, what is it? No one said what it was.
Oh, I can
know?
explain it if you want. Sadly, I know too much about this. But
No, I
Kevin,
just
if you
mean
want to, you can.
in that debate, they didn't take the time to explain what it was. It was like,
No.
oh, there
No.
was a thing called social autopsy. You want to walk us through it? And it's like, and some viewers are like, what the hell is he talking about?
And to be fair, there were two pieces. There were the website and then there was the database. And the database was still online, even though the website wasn't being built anymore. And she hadn't removed access to that database. So when she was
And-
criticized, she also took that down. But that was still out. That was before the Rubin thing.
The splash page thing that they were arguing about for ages. I didn't even know what that meant. Like, why are you arguing a splash page? What does that mean?
Oh, Dave Rubin was so out of his depth. The one who, when they put the music for the Larry David show music, what was it called again? That was the best one.
And Sound of
Coherent
Silence.
enthusiasm, just the
that's one I
zooming in.
like.
Yeah, I
Hello,
did the sound of
darkness,
silence.
my old friend. It's good to see you
Yeah, I
once
did. I put a video up on my
again.
channel of that.
He just had no control in that room whatsoever. It
Ah.
was-
Well, Dave Rubin just wants to talk with far-right idiots about vague ideas of left and right and free speech, as if that means fucking anything. Like everyone says, it's basically saying I like free speech is like saying I like ice cream or I like movies. It's fucking pap. It doesn't mean anything.
Well,
And once you
it's,
actually get into talking about any actual issue, Dave Rubin just, it's not what to do. He's not a journalist. He's a joke.
I like free speech is contingent on what your sense of what free speech is. If you just say I like free speech, that's not really that clear. You have to explain, what do you mean by that? What are the parameters here? How do you define free speech? Like, how does the idea of free speech work in your mind? You can't just say I like free speech, the end. You know, that doesn't really mean anything. Anyone can say that. You know?
Well, exactly, but this is the thing. He claims to be a free speech absolutist, but just like all supposed free speech absolutists, he's a fucking joke. Because how many people has he threatened to sue for defamation? He's never done it, but he threatens people with it all the time. He's a fucking clown.
Also, he's a free speech guy who also hates criticism or hates anybody ever pushing back at a single thing he has to say.
Yeah.
So he kind of wants free
Like,
speech in
if
one
you wanna-
direction, but if the free speech comes back towards him, he's like, no, block, destroy, go, leave. I'm being free speeched.
Well, it's not just blocking. It's like I say, it's if you're a free speech absolutist, then you can't, in good conscience, try and invoke slander or libel, because that's a restriction on free speech, is it not?
Exactly. Well, that plays into what someone's perception or parameters for free speech are, you know, including libel and slander. That's one element
exactly.
of thinking about free speech.
Surely there's no one in the world who thinks there shouldn't be some laws against libel and slander. Therefore, there isn't anyone who think there shouldn't be rules against child prostitution. They're fucking clowns that no one should ever listen to. Seriously, kids, if you get into anti-capism,
it's the marketplace of ideas. Like, if you don't like my views on pedophilia, you can just fire a rocket at my house, and my militia will respond. That's how it works.
Well, I can't wait till I have a private fleet of nuclear weapons, because that's definitely healthy for the world.
They're like, this person disagreed with me online. I'm just going to nuke them.
But anyway, my basic point before I was derailed by Tim and the Ancaps, which, by the way, Tim and the Ancaps, a great name for a band. Tim and the Ancaps.
Except we could probably never get our act together. It's real chaotic. You know what? I don't want to play drums, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, my point is, everyone agrees that there should be some libel and slander laws. Therefore, the people who claim to be free speech absolutists aren't. They're fucking liars.
Did anyone else want to say anything about the Dave Rubin thing while we're still on the topic? I don't know, Gwen, if you wanted to get on that. And then whoever just talked. Okay.
Sorry, just real quick. Someone in the chat said, source on Dave Rubin threatening lawsuits, or are you guys just liars? Lies.
Go onto his Twitter. Go into his Twitter and type in "I'll sue you" or something, and they'll pop up.
So
he did do that, because I'm not fully.
He had I saw that tweet. Yeah. I remember he threatened to sue somebody on Twitter. I can't remember what outlet was it. Some journal or something reported on him and called him right wing, and threatened to sue.
Right. Okay. So answer to your question. No, apparently we're not liars. Just so you know.
And yet he says right wing shouldn't be a pejorative. Yet when he's quoted, he gets insulted. What the fuck?
Yeah, because he doesn't like the speech going in his direction. When the
Can I
speech
ask
is
why
in his direction.
Why is Kristi in the chat and not in the Hangout? Because I know she has views on Professor Peterson. Before Gwen goes,
and we need to be trolled by small people as well, which is always good. Yeah.
So I think before you're going to say something, Gwen. Yeah.
Oh yeah, let me just unmute my mic real quick. I think. I mean, I guess I remember the. I think the first time I ever saw anything from Dave Rubin, I was watching Garrett's channel, rest in pieces. I saw some tweet that Dave Rubin had tweeted, and I thought, all right, well let's check this guy out. And he's to quote Tim, he's just a sponge. He just kind of has the same few talking points, and he sits there and he kind of will say those talking points over and over again to whoever he's got on, and then kind of just mindlessly agree with whatever thing that they say, which sometimes, occasionally he'll have somebody on and they'll just say something and I'll think, well, hang on, I'd talk more about that. Or, if you're not going to challenge it, dig into it a little bit. And he just kind of plays off of it. Every Dave Rubin guest is a springboard for Dave Rubin to kind of bounce off of, and then he'll give them a leg up and just kind of, it's really bizarre.
Yeah, it's always he ended up defending Stefan Molyneux and whitewashing his bullshit about race and IQ, for fuck's sake. It's ridiculous.
Someone could be like, I think in certain circumstances, you could put other races in death camps, so to speak. And Rubin would be like, oh, okay, yeah, well, some people are going to take that out of context. Or, no, I literally mean, put people in death camps. Oh, okay, yeah, well, Twitter's going to go crazy now. Anyways, so tell me about your political evolution. You're like, what the fuck, what?
Yeah, and his whitewashing of Paul Joseph Watson's conspiracy theorist, past but present. It was ridiculous. He basically came to the conclusion that he wasn't a conspiracy theorist, even though he literally pushed. He was at the time he was pushing Pizzagate.
Well, it's hard to tell if he chooses not to challenge people, or if he just can't challenge people. Because in that shit show mess thing with Red Pill Black and Blair, it seemed like out of his control, like he couldn't handle it. Like it wasn't part of his skill set to actually try to challenge. And I've never seen him try to challenge someone, so it's hard to tell if he chooses not to do it or if it's just he lacks that ability.
Well, hey, Christiosity. It's so nice to be able to hang out. Thank you for giving into the peer pressure.
Yep.
And you have your choice. Do you want to speak about Jordan Peterson and his AI to detect postmodernism in university courses, or Dave Rubin and his shit show with Blair and Candace and other stuff he does?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm more concerned right this second with Jordan Peterson, but I don't know what you guys have already said, and I don't want to
I don't care. I want to hear what you have to say.
Hang on. You haven't been listening to the whole thing, Chris, though?
No.
Friend of you? What kind of support is this? Ridiculous.
It is. It's terrible. You know what it is? I was having dinner with my in-laws. So
I would definitely pick our hangout, but you probably had to do the in-laws.
Well,
no, I'm sure they're lovely. I'm sure they're lovely.
they are delightful people, whom I love dearly. And yeah, all right. So let's go. Moving on from that. So yeah, Jordan Peterson, McCarthyist, obviously, or he would like to be. Someone gives him the half a chance. But yeah, I mean, this is really about harassment. And, he sort of showed his hand when, what is it, a week ago? Not even a few days ago, he was doxing people who were against him. And you look very confused, Tim. Did this not come up?
Oh no!
No,
Just
actually,
someone in the chat said this is the most dishonest conversation I've ever heard. You're
And I
bunch
just
of liars.
got here. I just got here, and it's already the most.
No, so I was asking why we're liars, and they
Exactly,
said
Chris,
because Rubin just does interviews. That's all he does. I'm like, well, it's a right-wing echo chamber because he invites on tons of right-wing people. He doesn't really challenge them, and then his channel has this right-wing narrative which is pushing a message. So I think you're just naive, and it's not because I'm dishonest. It's because that's just my perception of his channel. If you don't like that, then sad day.
Tim,
all right,
Tim, stop responding to Rubin trolls. They're idiots.
But while the troll brought it up,
What's an accusation against me? An accusation.
Christiosity, do you want to explain how he doxed the students? Because I know you know this well, and you could explain it, and then they can go look up the specifics.
Okay, so he was supposed to have a I didn't realize I needed to know it this well. He was supposed to have a speech, and some students objected, and it ended up that he was disinvited, or the university or college or whatever it was felt like it was just too much of a pain in the ass, too much money for whatever. I can't remember exactly, but he was disinvited. So he posted the Facebook accounts. Hang on one second, sweetheart. He posted.
Yeah, probably by small people.
Yeah. See, this is why I was in the chat. So and now he's playing with a balloon. Can you believe it?
So the movement trolls.
So anyway, so he posted their Facebooks, just their Facebook pages and links to their Facebook pages online. These are just students, two young female students. How can I take myself seriously when I'm listening to somebody squeak a balloon right behind me? This is ridiculous.
Sounds enjoyable, though. Amazing toy, just a balloon.
Hang on one second.
If it pops, they'll be traumatized.
So I can maybe pick up the thread a little bit.
Oh my God.
So maybe I'll give her the mute.
Christ.
Oh, okay.
I've been.
Okay. Sorry.
Is that such a big deal?
Sounds like a
So-
violent crime has been committed.
It sounds like, sorry. I thought she muted herself, and I tried to mute her. It was all very much. But anyway, I think I can pick up the story, which is to say that he posted the Facebook pages. One student took hers down, the other one left it up, but it was definitely a dox.
Can I just say that Christianity bit there? I can't help but feel that that might be used in some sort of matricide case in the very near future.
No. That sounded entirely like, hey, come on, how important was that? I thought it was perfect. So, yes.
No, but exactly. But this is the beginning of the descent into madness before she goes crazy and kills everyone in the world. Obviously.
Well, you know, feminism does make women into witches and make us have abortions and things. So, you know, it's all the
awesome,
pink hat wearing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
If we can get back to the Peterson story. So yes, he did definitely do that, and that is part of his. It seems like this pattern now of, well, he's already established that he's willing to put people's names out there and identify them for his fans, and he wants to now take that power, or at least he is taking that power and applying it to a university setting to target his colleagues in other fields. So Kristi, just so you know, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself to come back.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly, I think, the same thing that we have seen with these other right-wing trolls. They just don't give a crap who gets hurt. You know, Milo Yiannopoulos, people were getting shot. There were riots. You know, there was all this crazy stuff. He was doxing trans people. He didn't care. He was going to keep, if he hadn't managed to piss off conservatives and get himself sort of in trouble that way, he would have kept going until somebody died. Nothing was stopping him. He was loving it. You know, he was enjoying himself as if this was a great time. And in the meantime, people are having riots over him. And he's doing absolutely nothing to calm things down. He's only trying to stoke the fire. At the same time, you've got Richard Spencer, who every time he has an event, somebody either ends up murdered or somebody attempts to murder somebody. They don't care. And now we have this guy who wants to start doxing people and making lists and putting out names. And it's like, these are just students. These are just young women students who are now getting rape threats, death threats. Their families are listed. Their friends are listed. You know, you can't do this sort of thing. Everybody in the world who has half of a sense of responsibility that it takes to get up and get out of your house in the morning knows that you don't do this. It's the same with Sargon, putting out people's names and where they work and taking pictures of people. There's this, it reminds me of the movie Nightcrawler is what it reminds me of. Like, they just want to keep going and seeing how far they can push the envelope until it blows up in their face.
Yeah, it goes beyond just attempts at murder and stuff as well. Because when Richard Spencer recently spoke at, I think it was the University of Florida, the governor of Florida issued a state of emergency for the local town, literally because he was going to turn up. So he has the same effect, and is potentially so destructive that he gets the same treatment as you would for a fucking natural disaster. That's how bad that's gotten.
The thing that I would sort of point out is that, you know, I think I don't want to say I'm speaking for him and I know his motivations, but given the track he's on and the things he said and things he's done, and having watched Milo and having watched Sargon, I think Peterson would be absolutely fine with getting fired despite his tenure. Because he's already making $70,000 a month before being a victim, of the establishment.
I think he'd earn more if he did get fired, because that would be amazing
Exactly.
for him.
Sorry, can I make a quick comment on the doxing thing? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We were waiting for you.
Okay, well, you know, Kristi was talking about it a little bit. I was reading like a Reddit thread where people were talking about it, and all of these conversations always turn into people debating the meaning of the word doxing. And it's just so like tedious. It's always just like someone would be like, well, technically it wasn't doxing because doxing is, it was already out there, and this is actually publicizing a dox, which is not a type of doxing. And then someone else would be like, actually, publicizing a dox is a type of doxing. And then someone else would be like, well, actually, doxing is defined as this. And I think it's really just stupid how people nitpick a word as a way of trying to figure out whether something that someone did was good or bad. To me, Jordan Peterson taking a student's Facebook page, putting it on his Twitter and saying, this is one of the people who don't like me or something, it's a bad thing to do. Like, whether it's doxing or not, it's a bad thing to do. But you've got like these long debates with people like, is it this word or isn't it? And it's like, it's so, I don't know. It's just like the pedantry of people online is sometimes it's such a waste of fucking time. There's like, well, Tim, actually, this word means this. It's a different thing. And it's like, well, we can agree that it was a shit thing to do, though, right? You can see why it's a bad thing to do. And I think that person like privated their Facebook or something.
Your right-wing troll voice sounds very like your Jordan Peterson voice.
Yeah, I have like 3 voices, I guess. So
that's good. I've only got 2, so you beat me.
Oh, there you go. I'm developing
I only got one.
4th.
Ted. Oh, Ted, you're going to break my heart, boy.
I am going to jump in here. As point curation, you don't have to pay me for every time you ask a question. You can tag me, and if I see it, that works too. I shouldn't dissuade people from giving me money. Thank you very much. But to be honest, yeah, take the monies. Right. So the question is, would I ever talk with Peterson via a live stream? I would. I think it would probably make more sense to do like a moderated thing, like someone who, not like Dave Rubin, but to actually have like a topic and a back and forth. Yeah, I would be up for that. I'd have to know like the topic and the time and the structure a bit more, but I'm not on, sort of prima facie opposed to the idea of that. So yeah, getting back. Sorry,
I'd talk to him. And I wouldn't prepare for it. I'd just sit there and scream. I'd just sit there and wave my cock at him. Fuck it.
But he would drown you in psychobabble, probably. Like, you'd have to prepare to.
But would his psychobabble put up with my helicoptering? I think not.
That sounds like real Marxist behavior there.
Yeah, you definitely need to
talking about his penis.
I don't know if it's like it's not good timing given what's going on. Louis C.K. Come on. Okay, it's a completely different topic.
But Jordan Peterson has said that we can't have a witch hunt against male sexuality. So I can just say, you're going to have to put up with this. You're going to have to literally put up with me touching myself right now,
and
because otherwise you're demonizing male sexuality.
Paul Joseph Watson said, does it matter if Antifa actually had this sign, given how funny it is? And everyone was just like, oh, so he's literally saying you can lie if it's funny. And then lots of people were saying, like, well, look at this. He's a member of NAMBLA, and Paul Joseph Watson's a pedophile. And people were saying, hey, come on, that's wrong. You can't do that. And it was like, well, it's just actually his logic. He's saying if it's funny, it's fine. And everyone's like, well, and that was funny. So
let's be honest.
Calling him a pedo was
Paul
funny.
Joseph Watson eats books, and you can't correct me because it's funny.
I actually also think it's
lower
true.
charge than he's a pedo.
He definitely doesn't read them, that's for sure. Boom.
But I thought, okay, saying someone is a pedophile is bad, but he kind of set this up for himself, to be perfectly honest.
Brain Force 1 will definitely give you cancer, but that's actually probably true. I don't know, but
Like, he teed it up for everybody. Hey, everybody, say fake things about me, and I'll just tee it up for you. And it was like, oh my god, you're stupid.
All right, so where do we go from here?
He gets the vote he gets the vote in elections that me and Ted have to suffer through. So,
oh god,
just imagine that.
Brexit was an incredible rebuke of the powers that be.
Well, this is in a way, this is fascism. This is the truth doesn't matter. This is alternate facts. This is, everything. Those people weren't giving a Nazi salute. They were giving a Roman salute. And these people who with the torches are probably very nice people, and like there's no sense of reality.
It's nice that there was just a bit of fun, you know?
But this is the point I made at the top, and thank you for the interjection from the children again there. But the point I made at the top of the show is that their reality has become what they imagine and what they describe postmodernism to be, where you can basically make up any old shit.
To add on to that, I don't know if you guys heard, but today, well, Veterans Day, Trump said that he talked to Putin and Putin told him that he didn't mess with the election and he believes Putin.
Ridiculous.
Intelligence agencies' conclusions based on the empirical evidence.
Yeah.
And he did it on Veterans Day.
Yeah, Detective Trump has solved another mystery. Clearly. But what was also really annoying, actually, was that he said that he was insulted that they'd interfered with the election, which just made me think, well, maybe he could, you know, just murder some more journalists and imprison more political opponents to take his mind off that insult. Maybe, you know.
Oh, come on. He's a really strong leader, according to Trump. He knows, at least he runs his country. And in the U.S., we've killed some people too. I can't, he said that when he was running for president, and they still voted for him.
About grabbing women's vaginas. So I mean, after
There
that,
was,
does it really matter what he says?
and I should send you this link. You might be interested in it. Before he won, while he was still running, somebody did a poll or something, and they discovered that right-wing authoritarian personality was incredibly high. It was correlated to people who were supporting Trump. And this person actually said, we have a lot of right-wing authoritarians in the US, so people should look at this. He might actually win because, and I don't know if people know much about the right-wing authoritarian personality thing. It was started in Nuremberg when they were studying Nazis and Nazi psychology, because they had these Nazis there and they were doing, they were imprisoned and they were, doing sort of psychological tests to try to find out why people would do the things that they did. And so they came up with sort of an authoritarian personality, which has sort of been whittled down a little bit over the years into right-wing authoritarian personality. And there's sort of a set of personality traits that sort of cluster around people who are right-wing and authoritarian. So it was just I don't know. Now I've wandered off onto a whole different topic, but
there is that mindset that exists in the United States. And I keep coming back to the financial crash of 2008 and the fact that, the stock market is doing fine and the 1% are doing fine, but the 95% aren't, and they haven't for a decade now. And that is fertile ground for right-wing populism. And that kind of right-wing authoritarian mindset demands certainty. There's no gray areas. They prefer things to be right or wrong. They appreciate strength. And that is the kind of people that have been attracted to Trump and are the kinds of people who defend Roy Moore by saying things, comparing, for instance, the relationship that he may have had with this, they deny the women's story for women, that they're comparing it to like Joseph and Mary, or saying, well, he probably felt, if he did do it, he felt sorry and the Lord forgave him, and therefore I can vote for him. When you have to a worldview tied in with right-wing views, you're going to prefer your party putting in a pedophile, voting for a man who's accused of sexually inappropriately touching a 14-year-old over a Democrat, purely on sort of tribal grounds. And if they're at 35, sorry, just one last thing. If they're at 35% of the population, that either means they just need to get people to not vote through voter suppression or voter depression, keeping people away from the polls, or by getting, an extra 10 or 12% to 50%.
I was just going to say.
So, I got to get going. So, because I have to go mow the lawn, which is very important.
It's always good to talk to you, Tim. It's always good to have you on.
Thank you. Just we gotta clean this place up a little bit. Make
All
it
right,
nice.
we'll have fun on your
All right.
day of tidying up.
Right.
Catch you
Will do.
later.
All right. Sorry about talking over everyone.
I was
See you
just-
guys later. Oh, but
Okay.
maybe I'll just stay to
Right.
talk over Kevin more. All right. Bye.
Kevin, you were going to say?
No, right. I was just going to say that the Roy Moore stuff doesn't surprise me in the slightest, because they put 12 months ago they put a rapist into the White House. So what should shock you anymore? You know.
I think there is going to be, moving on slightly to the topic, there does seem to be a break in the Republican Party of people who feel like they know what the line is now, and either they were never Trumpers or they've been driven back across the line. And this, it's been a building civil war for quite a long time. Bannon is a figurehead now. The establishment Republicans don't really have a similar figurehead who can speak for them and lead them, but the party is basically on its way to in two. And the Roy Moore thing is a real flashpoint. Whether or not the establishment will try to somehow interfere with the election through a write-in campaign, not that that's interfering, but considering it's their own candidate, it would be sort of interfering with their candidate's campaign. Or there was some talk that the governor was going to try to pull some shenanigans to push the election back so that they could find another candidate, which also would not be at all fair and be messing with democracy. So that race in Alabama is actually becoming a real moment of conscience, a crisis of conscience for the Republican Party.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about the Republican Party is they've been courting this. They've created this monster. They can look at it and say, oh my goodness, what's going on here? What's going on here is what you've been working on for 30, 40 years, to be honest, with, a little bit of dog whistling here, a little bit of, maybe a little war on women over there, just keeping a little bit out to the fundamentalists, a little bit out to the, to this reactionary segment, to this racist segment, to this sexist segment. You can't keep doing that and expect that it's never going to bite you in the ass. So that's just my piece.
Well said, I think. Who else wants to come in on that? Anyone?
Yeah, Trump obviously isn't the one and only. He's just a massive nation of all these little nasty bits that's been growing over the years.
True, and they've also been put in, there's the Fox bubble. People who live in the Fox bubble only see, basically have become a state propaganda machine. When the election happened this week on Tuesday and the Democrats swept, there was very little coverage of that. If you look to the other channels, it was all about looking at the races and how many new women had come into office, the turnout, the enthusiasm, the percent that came out to vote against Trump, which was about 30%. That's why people said they came out to the polls. Also, healthcare was so important, so they were analyzing the results and the implications. Fox, it was like crickets. So it's not just it's a tainting of the entire body politic.
Yeah, Fox News are basically going down the line of it's a cultural Marxist plot that the state of Virginia even exists, apparently. So they didn't go with it. They just ignored the results. And
they managed to flip all those seats despite heavy gerrymandering. So it's really been an impressive getting as close as they did. No one expected it, and to have of the 15 seats that were certain to flip, 11 of those being occupied by women, was a massive reaction. When started to go off about the Women's March, but people said Women's March, and if you remember, one of the criticisms of it was, you guys don't have a central message, you don't have a certain theme, you're all just a bunch of groups that don't really have anything in common except you don't like Trump. And yet what happened within the movement is that we formed alliances and connections, and we became aware of each other's issues and how our issues are interconnected. People who won this time, the first openly transgender, the first transgender woman was elected to office. You had African-American women being elected, Asian American women being elected. And it was people who were first-time people who had become more involved because of their involvement post-Trump. And I do think you can draw a line as well to the Me Too hashtag. there have been a lot of times in the past where women have come forward, even in groups, to make accusations of sexual harassment or sexual assault. But this time, in this case, Rose McGowan found a connection with women who were already activated and knew the power of social pressure. And I think we all took up that banner, one, because of the connectedness, but two, because of how wide the experiences were. And that fallout is still happening. And I think that's an offshoot. It's a direct result of the Women's March and the enthusiasm it created in a lot of people. So I'm kind of gone off on a rant here, but it's a topic I've been had in my head for a long time and I haven't put together, and I wanted to kind of just take over the conversation and say all those things. But I think it's a really exciting time for the resistance and for progressive people in America. It gives me hope. As much as the darkness of the Trump administration scares me, the fact that we are still able to use the democratic process to hold it back and to start pushing back does make me feel so much better.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out as well that the transgender woman who unseated the guy who was one of the co-authors of the transgender or anti-transgender bathroom bill in Virginia as well, which was quite nice. And someone said that around on Twitter that the first thing she should do is introduce a bill to stop that guy from using any public toilets whatsoever, which I thought was quite nice.
But
well, you know, Republicans have something of a history with not being safe around public toilets. It's true. They have a much more of a history with that.
With a wide stance as well. But can I also just say, just before you hold on, Kevin, because she actually was asked about if she had anything to say to her opponent because he refused to debate her. He wouldn't even be in a public appearance with her. And her reaction was that on January whatever, he's going to become one of my constituents. And I want all of my constituents to feel welcome. I don't have anything mean to say to him.
That's a proper public servant. Yeah, that's actually very good. What was I going to say? To connect two issues we've now discussed was the arguments that were put around about that transgender bill. What about the children? We've got to protect the children. And those very same people are now saying, oh, it doesn't matter that Roy Moore probably raped 4 kids. Who cares? It's fine.
Well, yeah, it was sexual lewd conduct or sexual assault because it was outside the underwear of the 14-year-old, and the other ones were at least above the age of consent, but still creepy age distant kind of ages. But yeah, I always like for just purposes of being accurate. I'm the one who does the erratas and the hangouts if I know.
Okay. Pedantry aside, my point stands.
Yes, it does, and it still stands entirely that the excuses are pathetic. I haven't heard from Gwen for a while. We haven't heard from Gwen, so wanted to give you some space to get in here.
Yeah, sorry about that. My dog was just in here, and he's a very large and very loud pup. But I guess I've been listening a lot, and I've kind of absorbed a lot of information. I remember being at the Women's March in January and kind of like getting a really interesting sense that something about what you might call like the mainstream progressive political conscience had kind of shifted. There was kind of this sudden recognition, rightfully so, that things were a little bit more dire than they had previously been given credit for. And I think if I've got one criticism of a lot of, maybe more like middle of the road liberally minded people, it's that they have a tendency to recognize when things are wrong, and they'll talk about it sometimes, and they'll do a lot of hand wringing, but they won't necessarily even support any kind of action. I always feel like the second you do something or advocate for something, they might not be comfortable with it. There's a certain sense that I get a kind of, maybe this is a criticism of myself in the past, I don't know, but it's kind of a liberal discomfort or a moderate discomfort with big radical changes. And it's one thing to not agree with a change, but it's another thing to kind of casually swing in favor of the status quo when someone proposes a change. So I often feel as if, looking back on the Women's March, as if that was a really important moment, just for me personally, as a young person who's political, but also I think for the country. Like the election of Donald Trump is in so many ways like a very small corner on this kind of political journey that we're on.
Just to add on that. Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I so feel you. And it drives me crazy. I don't think I have just one criticism of certain liberal factions. But what I see, so for instance, Rose McGowan, I'll say that she needs some educating on some issues, like trans issues, like issues with people of color. And I don't think that should be, if you say that in certain corners, you'll be met with, but she's this, don't. And I'm like, I'm not taking anything from her courage. I'm not taking anything from her intelligence, from her willingness to fight. I'm just saying that everybody needs educating sometimes, and we don't have to constantly compromise everything all the time. Like that, I don't know who spread that rumor that we have to constantly compromise our every value, because I think at her heart, Rose McGowan probably has the values that we have and doesn't have the education and doesn't live with a bunch of advocates and, doesn't spend her time with people on the left to talk to her about these issues. Why can't we bring this up? I mean, this is maybe off topic, off from what you were talking about, really, Gwen, but it's about, I think, this almost knee-jerk feeling that the left has to back off. The left has to stop. The left created Trump. Like, no. Trump wasn't us. There's going to be backlash. There's going to be backlash for the Me Too campaign. There's going to be backlash for all of anything that we put forward. As much as it's right, as much as it's just, as much as it's real, there will be backlash. And we all know it. And it's going to hurt. It's going to sting when it comes. And we have to keep plowing through and pushing further and further. Because we can't just abandon huge swaths of people and say, oh, your time might come someday, if we get around to it. But right now, like, that's not who we are. And if we were able to do that, I feel like instead of having 30% of people just, I'm here to beat Trump at any cost, maybe we'd have the same number of people saying, I'm here to create a better world. And I'm here because I see a vision of a better world that could happen. Anyway.
I think that was fantastic. I want to concur with everything you said. I don't know enough about Rose to know her intimate beliefs. I pretty much just see other people's retweets of her, especially related to, promoting the Me Too hashtag. But yeah, all of us could use a bit more education. I think our whole lives should be a process of education. Every day should be a school day. And when somebody gets something wrong, you should be able to say, hey, have you thought about this really? Because it sounds like you're saying this. And I think, if you think about it, this is a better way to look at it. Yeah, Kevin.
Well, I think that is a really nice way of tying it into what we started talking about, that what the world needs is more education, not less, Mr. Peterson.
Very much so.
It's not necessarily bad to be wrong. Part of learning involves being wrong, but you should accept more knowledge.
The thing that I want to pick up that Gwen touched on was, oh, sorry, yeah, I wanted to just throw this out here. The idea that,
Done.
Sorry, I was so excited about this. The other criticism I have of progressives and liberals is that because we're concentrated in urban areas, it's easy for us to sort of talk about things and vote the right way we haven't been as good, especially with the Democratic Party, in really supporting or even creating enthusiasm in areas where that's not the case, finding other Democrats and reaching out. And what Rachel Maddow did recently was a great piece about, after the election of Trump, several groups got together and started organizing. There was one of former Clinton staffers that organized a group called Run for Anything, or Run for Something. City council, school board, state house, whatever, just run for something. Bernie Sanders people put together a group. I can't remember the name of it, but they also recruited candidates and fielded them. The Indivisible group also organized people with marches and connections and trainings. And as a consequence, they fielded, like, I think over 1,000 candidates. I mean, it's been crazy the amount of people they've trained to move through the program. That, combined with the new Democratic Party strategy of trying to support them and parties in areas where they haven't traditionally been supported. And that's all, I think, capturing the enthusiasm and the consciousness change that came about after the election of Donald Trump. And also, I think part of that too is we are seeing a massive cultural shift. To me, it's akin to when the Supreme Court came down with the decision that legalized marriage equality, or made it across the states, the law of the land, I should say. I saw just before we came on air, another guy has been accused of sexual harassment and booted out of something. There are so many now, I can't keep track of them, and in so many different areas of entertainment and other businesses as well. And that, to me, is like the biggest cultural shift I remember seeing since marriage equality, that it seems like we've crossed a watershed now. So many men have been rejected, or had things taken away from them as a consequence of accusations being made, that now we can't go back to just poo-pooing it and not really dealing with it, because there's a standard now. And I think that is a really good social change that has come about, I think, as a consequence of the political upheavals. And I'm done now.
Yeah, I was involved in some indivisible things, and it was very, we ended up, doing some things in a smaller city for the March for Science, for skepticism, for reason, those sorts of things. We ended up sort of touting that. And, again, I have to send you so much stuff, Kristi. I don't know what I've been doing. But just recently, a guy who was a sociologist had come out, and he'd done quite a lot of research. And he said, one of the things that we don't pay attention to is a lot of these sort of nonprofit, grassroots, ground level people. And he said, from my research that I've done, the reduction in crime that we've seen, a significant portion of it has to do with the communities themselves doing things and getting together and working together, and getting nonprofits and finding mentoring for young men and getting playgrounds and nutrition for kids. These little satellites that are all over the place, they make a real difference. And if people could appreciate what a difference a small thing could make, it can be a reduction in crime. It can be a reduction in, or an increase in voter turnout, or an increase in the number of women or transgender people who feel confident and who are able to go and be in politics and be, representative, and say, I'm not being held back anymore. And I think that's huge. It's huge.
To add to that, I can't remember who said it, and I don't want to misattribute it. So I'll just say the quote, which is, when you're not in the room where the laws are being made, people talk about you. In the room, they talk to you. And this is why descriptive representation, and that means looking like the people you represent, like the organizations that govern the country reflect the demographics and the diversity and the range of the population. That kind of descriptive representation is important because, yes, you can have substantive representation, which is where someone basically, all the things that you would do, they do for you. They're your substitute. The idea that, you know, I don't make decisions as a representative. I ask my constituents, and what the majority says, I just vote that. I mean, that's obviously completely impractical, but that would be just purely a substantive representation. But yeah, having people who run for office and have the support networks and the ability to connect and to get elected, that's going to create, I think, in my opinion, a higher quality of democracy and governance, because the programs then are going to represent more people's experiences as they're becoming law, not becoming law based on what people think people are experiencing and then having to do a feedback loop and then maybe not fixing the problems. So yeah, I think that that local connection and that kind of breadth of engagement is vital for democracy.
Yeah, it's like on a smaller level, I sit on Cardiff University's Patient Public Involvement Board, and the thing we're saying, having disabled people to actually feed into academia, through their personal experiences, is far more valuable for the university as a whole to progress.
Yeah, so I want to jump in on that.
So bit out of what we were talking about, but it kind of relates.
No, it comes back to the Peterson thing about academic freedom. So
I've tied both things in. Yay!
you did. You wrapped it up all in a bow and brought the ends together. So yeah, guys, we've been going, I guess, for about 90 minutes now. And I wanted to check, is there anything that people wanted to talk about that they haven't had a chance to, or to sort of YouTube gossip about while we're all in the same hangout together before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I'd just like to say something that I saw in the chat, and this was a little while ago, so I mean, I'm sure the chat has moved on by now, but it was a comment that, what was it, like, something about extremism, and I don't know, extremism doesn't work or something like that, like extremism is bad. And I would just like to say that when you're living in a certain situation, it can be sometimes hard to see the extreme aspects of where you are, you know, like if you think about the United States and you think about like certain corporations are allowed to exploit workers, they're allowed to like profit off of the suffering and in some cases of the enslavement of other people. Be hard to justify something like that. And I would call slavery extreme, you know, I would call like forced labor extreme, or labor that's coercive and stuff like that. It's really the idea that extremist solutions aren't viable, I think. And I know this is way out of left field, but I had to kind of come back and answer this just because I think it just kind of ignores that the situation, the status quo, the situation you're born into can be very extreme, but it's normalized. And so when people propose big radical changes, it can really shock people. And I realize that, you know, that is shocking, you know, to think about something being radically different from how it is. But I think it's worth giving it a thought. You know, I don't think we should just disregard all extreme solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The status quo is extreme in some cases. If you live in dire poverty, I would call that an extreme situation. Hello.
All right, yeah.
And
I
was going to pick up on that. I mean, I think that the entire city of Flint, Michigan is living in an extreme situation. And I don't understand how they're still living there. Like, not that I don't understand how they're still there. I don't understand how it hasn't been fixed. And it hasn't. It's amazing to me. They're just letting little kids drink lead.
Yeah,
There's
literally,
no reason.
They've made a film about it quicker than they have actually to fix the thing. I think that shows you the priorities, and I would say that's extreme.
Yeah, I mean it's just amazing. And every time I see like, oh, Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water, it's like, my God, what the hell? You know, we could fix that in 10 minutes if we wanted to. Or at least get it started to be fixed in 10 minutes. You know, I saw recently that Trump, there are government officials that have been going out to teenagers who are pregnant to dissuade them from getting abortions. And I get in these useless conversations with people about whether or not that's government coercion. Of course it is. Fucking of course it is. If you're a teenage girl who's pregnant, and a government person shows up. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's basically agreeing. Like, if it's a government doing it and telling you, it's persuading you to a position, of course that's government coercion. Like, that's the definition. Like, all the components are there.
What else is it? That's literally coercion.
I was told it was persuasion. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say the words No, I should. I said fuck off. I was like, oh, fuck off.
Excuse me, we don't have that kind of... We don't have that
I
kind
know,
of language.
we shouldn't. We really shouldn't. We should be above that.
Me and Kevin here, you know how sensitive we are.
My
I wonder how they would
apologies to you both.
If the government was out telling teenage girls of the benefits of, you know, or the dangers of pregnancy and the low risk of abortion procedures, I wonder if they would consider that government coercion.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if they'd be okay with the government giving out the statistics of poverty levels for single mothers.
Or how much a child costs over their lifetime.
Yeah.
And then here's some information on how to terminate a pregnancy. You can do it with drugs now, you know.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think they might be against that kind of government persuasion.
I mean, that's just creeping theocracy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not creeping anymore.
Yeah.
You know, once Betsy DeVos was signed in for her Secretary of Education job, creeping is no longer the proper term for the theocracy that's going on. And of course, you know, Trump doesn't care. Trump just wants he wants to make money.
The phrase sprinting theocracy sounds a bit weird, but probably more apt at the moment, to be honest.
Well, and then you have to sorry.
Steamroll the ring.
Well, and if you look, right over it, and it's more insidious than even that, because if you look at the number of positions the Trump administration still hasn't filled, so the government isn't performing optimally because there are positions that are left vacant and people can't do the work or make the decisions. And then you look at the gutting of the State Department. And the fact that what benefits Putin most in the world, except crippling the U.S.'s ability to do diplomacy around the world.
Well, this was a stated goal of Steve Bannon when he was the advisor or whatever, but basically running the show. Was he wanted to cripple central government. He wanted to reduce the number of actual employees of the central government enormously. precisely because he doesn't believe in the American state, it seems.
Which is a great aligns with Putin's interests. You know, he's able to exploit that and take advantage of that sort of incidental benefit of that policy to him.
But Chrissy, he's already given Donald Trump his assurances, and you have to believe Vladimir Putin because he's an ex-KGB agent who are obviously the most trustworthy people in the world.
Exactly. And the number of Russian ties now to members of his cabinet and to his campaign, it's becoming just unbelievable. It feels like I'm living in a spy novel. You know, this isn't reality. I somehow, my matrix got weirded out and I went into a more fictional reality than really exists.
True, but it's not even hidden anymore. It's just out in the open. It's so naked. The obviousness of essentially a traitor. I don't think there's any other way of describing it, is there?
Now, people talk about collusion, but I think that someone made the point we need to change that to conspiracy now, which is the accurate legal term, because, you know, collusion, whatever, treason, now really only in time of war, but a conspiracy, I think we can definitely point to many conspiracies.
Well, I don't think you can describe the current state of, or certainly for the last 10 years, let's say, the state of US-Russian war. It's a Cold War, it's a second Cold War, but it's a fucking war. Then you can deny that.
Oh, the whole reset was just Putin playing for time while he was, you know, pursuing another agenda.
Yeah.
You know, because he's in there for a long time, and we think from administration to administration, generally, well, and especially now. But you know, he thinks about decades into the future and protecting his assets and his resources and his friends. So yeah, I mean,
the parallels to the previous Cold War are all there. But instead of it being the Communist Party, it's the Putin Party.
well, this is a different direction from Jordan Peterson, but it was a good, interesting conversation bit. And whoever started that off, it was, thank you. I think it was Gwen.
Gwen.
Yes.
I can't take credit for it. It was someone in the chat that was that said something that I latched onto like 20 minutes ago.
I haven't been on with Gwen yet, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, this is the first time.
I know, and it's ridiculous. It's just because I'm so stupid. I can never get onto chats. So, because I have all these kids.
You're not so stupid. You have a life outside of the internet, like a real productive, worthwhile endeavor outside of the internet, which is shameful, frankly.
I know. I don't know how you even put up with me. Like, this is dirty.
As we have 56 viewers in watching us right now, why don't you plug your MythCon video series and tell us how the production on that is going?
Okay, so I should also plug that there is a channel called Capeo, and I'm not sure which it is, where I'm doing a debate series right now with Phil Moriarty about whether or not conservatism is the new punk. I don't think it is, but anyway, that we're debating that proposition back and forth. But it's an interesting channel based on an interesting idea of sort of trying to elevate the discourse by, you know, having genuine debates with opening statements and rebuttals and closing statements and that sort of thing. So people should go check that out. And also, yes, I do have a MythCon series coming up because I'm sure people are tired of talking about MythCon itself, but I really feel like this is an interesting moment where these sort of different groups and factions within the atheist movement that have apparently been just living as little satellites that don't talk to each other and don't interact with each other and don't know about each other, really, have sort of collided into with each other. And all of a sudden you have sort of the bigwigs, sort of the Arn Raws and the Matt Dillahunties, you know, meeting up with the Sargon of Akkad's and the YouTube scene and the podcast scene And then you have sort of the right and the left, if you want to call it that. I don't think that's the most accurate way. So they're hitting up against each other. And then in the you've got this sort of Me Too energy going on, but the atheists have been dealing with their own culture of misogyny, culture of harassment, culture of sexual assault that gets pushed under the rug and moved around, and nothing to see here, folks. Move it along. Why are you being so divisive? So you have all these sorts of things coming together, and I think it's a very interesting moment. And so I'm trying to sort of grab all these threads and tie them up. And we'll see if I succeed, but it will be on my channel.
I know, I'm very much looking forward to it. So does anyone else have anything that they would like to plug? I think, Ted, did you have something that you put out recently?
Well, today I just went on a loose ramble about the whole Louis C.K. situation. I noticed in live streams, like looking back at the one I did review, I still seem to get a bit uncomfortable, like just talking up the cuff. So I thought once in a while I'll do a looser, unscripted ramble to get myself more used to that kind of thing. So today I did that, but with my thoughts on the whole Louis C.K. situation. So obviously, trigger warning, it's about sexual harassment, but if you can stand that, yeah, give it a watch.
All right, thanks for that. Hey, Gwen, what about you?
Oh, I'm working on a response video right now. It's a video about the amazing atheist. I started this video series called Response-A-Go-Go, and basically the whole thing is inspired by Kevin's like Descent of Manosphere videos, but I wanted to make them even longer and less funny. So what I did, the whole concept. My girlfriend's laughing at me now. The whole concept is to just look at like the last year's worth of content from somebody, and for like an hour just kind of go through it and talk about who they are and what this tells me about them. So I wouldn't call it like a takedown video exactly. I'm not trying to pwn TJ, but it is definitely going to be me commentating on him. And I also do a lot of like gaming stuff if people are into that.
Yeah, I've been seeing those pop up. Yeah. Kevin, how about you?
Well, I don't know if I can follow that big sell from Gwen. That was hardcore, man. It's going to be longer and less funny. Genius. Yeah, but I'd like to plug everyone else's channel here because they're all amazing content creators. And I'd like to specifically bring up Ted. Ted's channel and his Twitter as well. He's one of the funniest fuckers. He's such a smart, sharp bastard. I wish I could be. I mean, he really is amazing. And he's criminally undersubbed. No, I mean it, lad. Yeah, go and check him out because he produces way better shit than me. He's criminally undersubscribed.
I don't. Thank you.
And everyone should sub Kristiosity and Gwen too. Lots of love to go around. Yeah, I mean, if you guys don't know their channels, I am probably going to go to bed now. And tomorrow I'm going to be traveling. But as soon as I can, I will also put the links to their channels. Now that I know who showed up in the chat, Tim too. And you guys can go and check them out and sub them. So I think we're going to wrap it up then. Thanks to all of my guests for coming on to the show. This is another Random Hangout. Thanks for all of you guys who stuck around and chatted in the chat and watched to the end. All that's left to be said is that I've been Kristi. You have been awesome. Thank you again from me, and thank you and goodbye from me and goodbye from my guests. So say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah.